Hi everybody, how you doing? As Mark says, my name's Roan Lavery. I'm one of the co-founders and chief product officer of Free Agent. And I want to talk to you today about one of the central challenges that I think pretty much most product teams face. And that's this kind of like need to build the core value of our products and try and balance that with having to drive growth for our business, because it's a very real thing for many of us. So I'll start by just telling you a little bit about kind of like Free Agent, in case you kind of don't know kind of who we are. So we make online accounting software for freelancers and micro businesses in the UK. Our company was founded back in 2007 by myself and two other co-founders. So we've been around for quite a while now, and in about 2016 we went public, and just earlier this year we actually got acquired. So it's been a pretty busy time for us. We've got actually over 70,000 sort of like paying customers in the UK now. Do around 10 million in revenue. So team-wise, we're about 150, and about half of those are in kind of product management, engineering, and product design, that sort of thing. You know, so we're not an early stage sort of like company by any means, and we're not an especially kind of like sort of small organization either. But this challenge that I kind of like talk about is something that I think all product organizations and teams face, regardless of what size you're at. So if you work in any capacity in product, you're probably going to find some of this stuff familiar, right? And if you're like a larger organization, then maybe you're hearing it from different teams and departments in your company. And if you're really, really small and just starting out, then there might just be different thoughts are whizzing through your own head at various points in the day or night. Or maybe you're just hearing them from your customers, right? So they're saying, you know, why don't you have this kind of feature? Or the product is too slow. Or maybe your CEO is kind of telling you, we need to increase revenue, or we need to up engagement. Maybe your customer support people are telling you, people are complaining about their product or this particular kind of feature. Or you've got your marketing people that are saying, no, we need to invest time in our analytics and our tracking. Or maybe the sales folks are kind of like saying something like, we need to do this custom development to win this deal, or we need these features in order to win these deals. Or maybe the sort of engineers or technical people are just saying, we need to fix these bugs, or we need to invest in the technical platform. So there's a kind of lot going on here, right? But I think that, sort of roughly speaking, you can lump all of these sort of different types of requests into one of two categories. And that's, building the core value of our product versus sort of driving the growth of the business. Now, kind of like full disclosure here, and I kind of like, I feel sort of fairly sort of safe in saying this, given that, I'm in a room full of product managers, but I'm a kind of product guy, right? And I would like nothing more to believe that all we need to do is build great products, okay? And that would be enough. We simply build an amazing product, people find out about it, they start using it, they think it's amazing, they tell all of their friends, and they come along, they use it as well, and it just kind of like goes from there. But unfortunately, experience has taught me that it's never quite that simple. And this kind of like build it and they will come philosophy, it doesn't always kind of like work out like that. And we do need to focus on this growth stuff, which I've got kind of over on this other side here. And, obviously we have sales and marketing teams which are designed to kind of like help with this sort of thing. But product plays a really, really important role as well. And so the contribution of product can be stuff like, streamlining the onboarding process for new users. It might be building landing pages to support a marketing campaign. It may be about supporting sales through sort of custom development work in order to help us win deals, or maybe it's some sort of price and packaging changes. There's a bunch of different stuff. And this is all really important, but what I definitely know is that if we're only focusing on this stuff, then we're not going to be investing in the long-term sustainability and performance and success of our products. And so that involves things like building new features and improving existing ones. It might be about improving the performance or the stability or reliability of our products. It may be about sort of fixing bugs or paying down technical debt, or it may just be about improving usability or sort of a user experience for our products. And what gets done between these two kind of things can depend a lot on your organization. And unfortunately, sometimes it comes down to who shouts the loudest to your company. Or maybe it's even just what the CEO wants. Being a product manager stuck in the middle of this can be really hard work, and it can be really frustrating. But we also remember it's hard for the teams that are building the products as well, because they're not always clear what the priorities are, what the focus should be right now, and where the direction is. But we should also bear in mind that it's difficult for the other stakeholders in the business as well, because it's not always clear to them why the thing that they think is so important isn't always top of the list and isn't being prioritized. So what can we kind of like do about this? Well, I want to talk to you about some of the tools and the processes and frameworks that we use at Free Agent in order to kind of like go about balance these sometimes kind of competing priorities. So I'm going to kind of call this a playbook. Now, kind of like largely because that's what the cool kids sort of seem to be doing these days. But really, this is kind of like just a collection of stuff that we do, put in some vaguely sensible order to make a nice presentation. Okay? So we're going to start off by articulating the core value of our product, okay? And I'll explain what I mean by that in a bit more kind of like detail in a second. Then we're going to think about how we drive growth in the context of mapping the user journeys that our users go on to experience that core value. And then finally, this is kind of like touching on some of the stuff that Kim talked about, we're going to talk about building this balanced scorecard of metrics that tells us not only how well we're doing at driving growth, but also how well we're doing at delivering that core value. Okay? So it sounds hopefully pretty good. Anyway, so just before we kind of like go on, one sort of big caveat. With a little bit of luck at the end of this presentation, you're going to be kind of like hopefully thinking, wow, these guys really know their stuff. Please don't be fooled, okay? No matter how simple and slickly this stuff kind of like appears here, it's never kind of like simple to put this stuff into practice, and it's never easy to kind of get it right, okay? So like, don't worry if this stuff feels really, really hard in practice, and that's because it is. We still struggle with this stuff on a sort of weekly, monthly, and quite frankly, emotional and sort of spiritual basis a lot of the time. The sort of second thing is I'm going to cover quite a lot of ground in this presentation as well. So I'm going to skim over the top of quite a few kind of like topics. Now, if you want to find out more about sort of what I'm talking about in any particular area, you see in the bottom right-hand corner of some of the slides, I'm going to put a search term. If you're interested in finding out more about that topic, take a photograph of the slide, Google that sort of search term later on, and you'll find more articles and resources that kind of like dig into in a little bit more sort of like depth. Okay, so step one, we're going to articulate the core value of our product. Now, what do I mean by this, okay? So you might say, well, obviously I know what my product does, and that's great, I hope you all do. But this isn't just so much about what your product does, it's to what your product means to your users. It's not just about the features that your product has, or even the sum total of those features, but what those features allow people to do. Now, obviously, the best way of going about understanding this is to go out and speak to your customers, go and speak to your users, and find out not only how, but why they're using your product in the first place. And I hope that we're all kind of like doing that, right? But even once you've done that, there's still quite an important job to do to take that insight and that information and bring it back into your organization and communicate in a way that builds up this shared understanding of that value across your entire organization. And so one of the things that we use at Free Agent is something called a core value map that kind of helps us do this, right? I'll kind of run you through it, but essentially what it attempts to do is to make a connection all the way kind of back from the individual features that you have in your product, back through the value that they offer, all the way up to your kind of like overall overarching vision as a business. So I'll kind of walk you through it. So you start off with a vision, and that's obviously your why. That's your kind of like reason to exist. This is ours. And that's making businesses happier and more successful by putting them in control of their finances. And then we say, okay, with this vision in mind, what user needs do we think we need to be meeting in order for this vision to be true, in order for us to be sort of succeeding on that? And here are our sort of like fundamental user needs. Now, there's only sort of like 3 of them, but it actually took us quite a long time to be able to articulate these sort of so succinctly. And that's we want to help people nail the daily admin, make the better decisions about their business, and ultimately relax about tax. So we believe if these 3 user needs are being met, then our users will be in control of their finances, and they will be happier and more successful as a result. And even just these 3 user needs are actually quite a powerful sort of rallying call within our business, and they get quite a lot of focus and attention. But they're probably not quite specific enough for, say, like a product team to really use them as a basis of a kind of like a direction or a strategy going forward. And that's where we take it one more level down, a bit more granular, to the jobs to be done. Now, I'm sure many of us are kind of like familiar with the jobs to be done framework here. If you're not, essentially what it kind of like says is that, you know, people don't tend to want to use your kind of like product for its own sake. They hire your product in order to be able to achieve a certain series of goals or outcomes. Kind of canonical example being that, you know, people don't actually want drills, they want holes, right? So looking at these user needs and breaking them down a little bit more, we see under some nailing the daily admin, well, that's about, you know, getting paid. That's a really, really important part of any business. business. It's about tracking cash flow, so knowing money in and money out of the business. Underneath making better decisions, it's about knowing how healthy my business is right now and also being able to plan for the future. And relax about tax, well, that involves sort of filing your taxes, which we kind of like do in Free Agent, and also about staying legal. And that last one might sound a little bit weird as a job, like stay out of jail. But it turns out when you ask people how important is it that you don't go to jail, it's actually fairly important. And then we say, okay, right, great. With these jobs in mind, what features do we need in order for our users to be able to successfully fulfill these jobs? And so under getting paid, it's stuff like, well, I need to be able to self-send invoices. I need to be able to receive payment for those invoices. I might need to chase up late payment. Under tracking cash flow, it's about knowing that money in and money out of the business. And I'll touch on this kind of like one at the bottom here, this bank fees, because we have this feature in Free Agent that allows you to connect your Free Agent account with your online bank account. And when you do that, you're then able to suck in transactions on a sort of like daily basis, and it builds up this picture of your cash flow. And I mentioned that because I'm going to come back to that a couple of times sort of later on. And you can see there's a bunch of other features that we've got there. So this is great, like I say, and what this attempts to do is to really show this overall value that the kind of product is bringing, not only in terms of the features, but what those features mean to people in terms of the jobs and ultimate user needs, all the way back up to our vision. But this is great, but obviously it kind of represents a sort of idealized end state. And I know that there's none of our users who probably even know about all this kind of like functionality, let alone use it. And that's just kind of like natural. I mean, maybe you're the kind of same, but I'm speaking to users all the time and they're like, Roan, you've got to implement this feature. And I'm like, man, we implemented that 3 years ago. Okay, you just didn't know about it, okay? So it's not simply enough that we have this value available. We need to understand how our users discover and experience that value. And that's where we kind of come onto this sort of second part of the playbook, which is mapping the user journeys that our customers go on to discover and experience that value. And I want to do this in the context of talking about growth. Now, I think there's a lot of different ways that we can think about growth. And I said before that I'm kind of like unashamedly a sort of product person. And so this is an unashamedly product perspective on how you drive growth. And it comes from this guy, sort of Chamath Palihapitiya, who was actually one of the original growth people at Facebook. And what he said was that in the very, very early days of Facebook, this was kind of going back to like sort of like 2007, 2008, I think, their whole strategy for growth, it wasn't about growth hacks, or it wasn't about virality or anything like that. Their strategy was to engage users with the core value of their product, which was adding friends, as quickly and as frequently as possible. Now, as we all know, that put them on a path to whatever it is, like 2.3 billion users now, so it worked out pretty well for them, right? And so with this in mind, let's think about how we drive growth in the context of the core value. And I want to do this looking across the entire life cycle of our users' usage of our product. So I think when I talk about this stuff, probably the thing which sprang to mind sort of immediately was this kind of like onboarding phase, right? So we're a SaaS product, and we have your typical sort of 30-day free trial. And obviously, we want to convert as many people from that free trial stage to become paying subscribers. That's kind of great. And we do that by trying to engage them with the core value, sort of reduce that time to wow, and to really sort of like get them to that light bulb moment as fast as we can. But it's not just about this onboarding phase, okay? And it goes on well beyond that, into this early usage kind of like phase that we have here. And this is where now somebody's maybe gone from being a free trialist into being sort of like a paying subscriber. But the job to be is not done in terms of like engaging people with that core value, because this is the stage at which you really want to be trying to build healthy habits around that core value. And it's important for kind of like two reasons. The first is that at this point, this is when you typically find your churn is the highest. What you usually find is that the longer a user or customer stays with you, the less likely they are to churn. So this early usage phase, this is when they're most at risk. But the other thing is what you also find is that this is also when people are most likely to refer your product. So the kind of like honeymoon phase. So by getting them invested in the core value and experiencing that core value and helping them build those healthy habits, you're able to drive growth by reducing churn and also increase referral. And it doesn't just kind of like stop at that, but it even went into this sort of established kind of use pattern where somebody's now been with you for maybe some many months or even kind of years. That kind of like process never stops. You need to be constantly reminding them of the value of your product. And there's this kind of like tool that you can use there called engagement loops. And there's a great link there to that kind of sort of like some resources by Brian Balfour that talk about this in a bit more depth. And then finally, you may get onto the last phase, which is this more disengaged or this kind of like churn phase, where now people are even perhaps like stopping using your product, or maybe they've even churned altogether. But you don't want to give up on them. You want to kind of like bring them back. You want to sort of like resurrect them. And again, you're going to try and do that by re-engaging them with the kind of core value of your product. So I'll take you through an example of this. And it's using this sort of like classic kind of like sort of like time to wow sort of onboarding phase that I talked about. And so like what you can see here is a user journey that one of our prospective customers might go on as they go from exploring our marketing website, so landing on that, signing up for a free trial, getting into the product, so onboarding and setting up the product, their account, and then finally exploring the core value. And what we're trying to get them to, the end state we're trying to get them to here, is this feature that I talked about earlier. So this like connecting to their online bank account, this bank feed. And again, we know that's really important because it's a really crucial part of the value of our product, so that's where we're trying to kind of get them to. And you see that, first of all, there's a lot of touch points, there's a lot of things that somebody has to do to kind of get through to that kind of point. And some of those are quite positive experiences, some of those are quite simple, and some of them are more negative and frustrating. But there's a lot of kind of like different touch points here, but we can look at this user journey map and we can say, okay, how can we improve this? How can we optimize this? So one of the things we did, you'll see this kind of point here where it says, get the activation email. So previously what would have happened is you would have arrived on our marketing website, the sign up form, you'd fill that in, and you'd hit the submit button, and then we would send you an email. And then you would have to go into your inbox, you'd have to find that email, open it up, click on the link, and then you'd be taken back into the product. Now that might sound like really, really sort of straightforward and easy, but what we were discovering was that around 10% of our users were failing to do this, okay? Around 10% of people were dropping out. It's actually quite a lot. So we did something that was really obvious. We just kind of like got rid of that sort of step altogether. And now what happens is you complete the sign-up form, and it just takes you immediately into the product so you continue on with the setup, and that's great. Now you get into this sort of like setup process. Now, Free Agent actually has a fairly complicated and lengthy setup process. You know, we're accounting software, so we ask for quite a lot of information up front. But again, from looking at data, what we could kind of see is, by and large, people were getting through that fairly sort of successfully. But what was happening was that people were completing the setup process, but they were landing on this sort of empty dashboard, and they didn't know what to do next. There wasn't enough guidance. There wasn't enough hand-holding in order to tell them where they should go, what they should do. And you know, not that many people were getting through to this sort of like final point that we want them to do. So we did something that sort of may sound sort of fairly counterintuitive. We took this fairly lengthy setup process and we made it even longer by taking the bank feed setup stuff and kind of like squishing that on the end to make it actually much longer. Now, this kind of sounds really counterintuitive because you might say, well, the last thing you want to do is actually make your setup process even more complicated or even longer. But what we found is by making this or really encouraging people to do this part of setup, the percentage of people that connected to their bank kind of went up. And that's not massively surprising. But what we also found is our overall conversion rate increased significantly as well. And this was a really, really crucial thing. That we were able to drive growth, increase growth by increasing conversion, by engaging people with that core value earlier on and quicker. So it's a really kind of a good example of that. Okay, so it takes us to the kind of last part. So kind of think about where we are now. So we've been able to articulate the core value of our product, and then we've been able to understand how we're going to drive growth in the context of getting people to experience that core value. The last stage that we're going to do is we're going to build this balanced scorecard of metrics and KPIs, and that's going to help us, it's going to tell us how well we're doing at both of these things, and it's going to help us make some sort of prioritization decisions. I really do agree with kind of like Kim's point, by the way, is that, we don't need to be dictated to by data and metrics, but they're certainly one of the tools that we have in our arsenal in order to inform the decisions that we make. So that's kind of what we're going to do. And we're going to use something called the Google Heart Framework. Now, some of you may be familiar with this as well. And it's essentially sort of a framework for thinking about metrics. And it says there are basically 5 categories of metric that we might be interested in as product people across these different areas that cover, I think, both how well we're doing at delivering core value and how well we're doing at driving growth. So it's things like, how happy are we making our users? How engaged are our users, both in the product or maybe just with an individual feature? Are our customers adopting the product as a whole, or are they adopting a particular feature? How are we doing at retaining our customers? That would be your kind of like sort of classic churn metrics. And then finally, how successful are our customers doing at completing certain tasks within the product? Okay, now again, these will be sort of fairly specific to your sort of product. Okay, now, this is the framework that we're going to use to build up this sort of balanced scorecard. Just before I kind of like dive into this, I do think it's worthwhile taking a little bit of time to think about this process of choosing metrics. And this really touches on a lot of stuff that Kim was talking about as well. Because I think that nowadays, it has become so easy for us to measure data. It's been so easy for us to get data and to track what our users are doing, that there is this kind of tendency that we all fall into, which is just to measure all the things. And you go into sort of like startup offices, and we've all got these like screens and dashboards around the place, and they've got like flashing numbers and dials and things whizzing about all over the place. And I think the problem is that it just becomes noise. People like sort of tune out to it. So I think it's much more important to pick a smaller subset, a handful of metrics that are really going to help you make decisions and that are really going to sort of like drive action within your team. And the Google Heart Firm actually has this really nice process for going kind of through this. And again, touching some of the stuff that Kim says, it says it starts off with your goals, okay? So think about the goals of the project across these 5 categories that you might have. So I'm going to look at a couple of examples from the happiness, engagement, and task success. And so under that, your goals might be, well, we want our customers to enjoy using the product, right? That's a really sort of like sensible kind of like happiness goal for us to have. But it might be something like, we want our product to be free of bugs because we think, well, if we've got this really buggy sort of like product, people are going to be pretty miserable using it. Under engagement is we do want our customers to be regularly engaged with the product. And under task success for us, we want our new customers to be connecting Free Agent to their bank, as I said. Okay, so with these goals in mind, we then say, what signals will we need to observe such that we will be confident we are achieving these goals? And so under the happiness one, it might be, well, if we observe that customers are recommending the product to their friends, then we can be confident that they're enjoying using it. If we observe that customers are not reporting bugs, then we can be confident that the product is largely free of bugs. If we observe that customers are logging in and using the product frequently, then we can be really confident that they're pretty engaged with it, right? And this might seem overkill, it might seem redundant, but I promise you, going through this kind of a process of starting off with your goals is a really useful tool in getting to metrics that really kind of matter and that help you sort of drive decisions. And so finally, kind of lastly, we get to the metrics. So we say, okay, if the signal is customers are recommending the product to their friends, the metric that we're going to track actually is our quarterly net promoter score. In the case of customers are not reporting bugs, the metric might be the open bug count. Customers are logging in and using the product frequently, the metric there is our monthly active users. And the last one, high proportion of customers are setting up a bank feed. Metric is percentage of people who do that in the first 14 days, right? So this is the process that we go through. And then finally, this allows us to build up this balanced scorecard of metrics and KPIs that reflects not only how successful we are at driving growth, but how well we're doing at delivering that core value of our product. And you can see here, now this is kind of what the balanced scorecard of Free Agent looks like. We have an overall one for the whole product, and then the individual product teams we have, they also have their own sort of specific scorecards and that are more sort of like relevant to their areas. But this is kind of like roughly how it looks. And you can see that there's core value metrics, but there's also kind of growth metrics here as well. And this provides 2 really important functions, I think. The first is that it gives visibility, and it says both to the team, but for the company at large, both of these things are important to us, and they're important enough so that we want to understand how well we're doing at them. And the other thing is, it says, is that because you can look at this, you can see, okay, these things are green, these things are red, it gives this really clear indication of where the focus needs to be right now. So what you can see in this example here, actually, our existing customers seem to be pretty happy. Our net promoter score is good, the App Store reviews are good, and monthly active usage is in the green as well. But some of the other stuff, like the free trial conversion or the setup completion, they're actually amber or red. So that's where the focus needs to be right now. So it makes it really clear to the team what the focus has and to the rest of the company why we're focusing on one area and not another. And then there's one last thing I'll kind of like touch on here, and it's to do with the kind of like scoring, this kind of red, amber, green stuff. Now, obviously, kind of green's good and red's bad, right? That kind of makes sense. But there's a bit more nuance to it than that. Because when a KPI goes red, what we're really saying is whatever team is responsible for that metric and owns that metric has basically the mandate to stop work on whatever they're doing right now and shift their attention and their focus away back to getting this kind of KPI green again. So an example might be that they're working on some really, really super important like feature for the business, but their KPIs, maybe it's their bug KPI, again, it goes red, and they're effectively says, actually, we need to stop working on this and shift our attention back to getting this KPI green again. And that's a really important aspect of how we give ownership to the teams and how we drive autonomy for them. Now, this stuff is never black and white, and I'll be totally honest about that, okay? What tends to happen is that if a KPI does go red, then one of the product managers would come to me and would say, Roan, listen, I know we're working on this feature right now, but we really need to be thinking we need to be diverting some of our resources and time away to getting our sort of like fixing these bugs. And so a conversation happens, and that's the really important part. It gives a framework for the visibility of this stuff, and it gives a Kickstarter for these type of conversations. So that's kind of the balanced scorecard. So that's kind of like really kind of where we are. Kind of the first step in the playbook was being able to articulate the core value of our product. The second one was like understanding how we're going to drive growth in the context of driving growth by mapping the user journeys that people go on towards that core value. And then finally, we build up this balanced scorecard, metrics and KPIs that tells us how well we're doing at both of those things and help us make some decisions. Great, so that's it. I hope that was useful.